Chapter 111. What is this? The veiled woman was horrified and hurriedly retreated. In her eyes, this illusory and invisible sword intent was almost superior to everything. Even the moon goddess statue that the moon worship had worshipped for thousands of years paled in comparison. Buzz. An inexplicable aura suddenly appeared around the veiled woman. A large amount of blood essence burned, trying to release some kind of life-saving witchcraft. However, all of this was useless. The sword light that came from the sky slashed down in an instant. When the sword light touched the veiled woman's body, it kept splitting into billions of miniature sword lights, easily cutting every piece of the veiled woman's flesh into nothingness. The white-haired old woman saw this scene and felt her scalp explode. Watching the saintess being erased out of thin air almost made her legs go soft and she fell to the ground. When the veiled woman's body finally turned into nothingness, a dark golden goo worm appeared. Screech! The dark golden goo worm made a sharp screech, and then a large number of miniature sword lights swept over and cut it into nothingness. That is, the saintess's life goo worm? The white-haired old woman trembled, and a fear from the depths of her heart suddenly surged into her mind and filled her heart. The goo worm was the source of Nanjiao witchcraft. Everyone, including the moon worshippers, had to use the goo worm to release witchcraft curses. The life goo worm in the veiled woman's body had been passed down for thousands of years. It was one of the oldest goo worms of the moon worship. For thousands of years, the moon worship had encountered many disasters, and even been destroyed and rebuilt several times, but this goo worm seemed to exist forever. But now, the white-haired old woman saw the dark golden goo worm turn into nothingness like the veiled woman. The white-haired old woman could no longer hold on. She knelt on the ground, her face ashen, and closed her eyes to wait for death. The white-haired old woman couldn't think of how she could survive. Even the goo worm that existed forever had died, let alone her. However, when the infinite miniature sword lights destroyed the dark golden goo worm, they didn't fall on the white-haired old woman. Instead, most of them quickly dissipated in the void. Only a miniature sword light flashed and branded into the white-haired old woman's body. A moment later, the white-haired old woman slowly opened her eyes. "I'm not dead?" The white-haired old woman found it hard to believe. Just now, he saw with his own eyes that the countless miniature sword lights were not damaged at all after the dark golden goo worm. Logically speaking, the next one to die should be her. "I survived. I survived." The white-haired old woman was overjoyed. Although she did not understand why she was able to survive, in the end, she was still alive. Hurry back to the Saint Church. Tell Sect Master everything that happened here. The white-haired old woman suddenly thought of something and immediately turned to flee. She wanted to rush back to the Moon Worship Center in Nanjiao as fast as she could. Chang and City was too dangerous. Any random sword light could obliterate everything. Only the Moon Worship Center could give her a little bit of safety. Run! Outside the Su residence, Su Qin's eyes were deep and serene, as if he could see the white-haired old woman fleeing in panic. Since the Moon Worship Center dared to reach out to the family Su, they had to be prepared to face the wrath of Venerable Arhat. The reason why Su Qin did not kill the white-haired old woman was that he wanted to use the white-haired old woman to lead the way and lock onto the location of the Moon Worship Center in Nanjiao. Nanjiao was located in the southwest. Although it was not as vast as the Empire of Tang, it would take Su Qin at least half a month to slowly scan the entire Nanjiao with his divine will to find the location of the Moon Worship Center in such a large area. And half a month? What did a month mean? It meant that there were 15 to 30 sign-in opportunities. It meant that there was the possibility of becoming infinitely stronger. Of course, Su Qin was not willing to give up so easily. Because of this, Su Qin branded a sword light in the white-haired old woman's body. With this sword light locking onto her, even if the white-haired old woman ran to the ends of the earth, Su Qin would be able to find her with a thought. In this way, when the white-haired old woman returned to the Moon Worship Center, Su Qin would only need to spend half a day to make a trip there. Just as Su Qin was deep in thought, everyone from the Su family also walked out of the mansion. Third brother, what are you doing out here? Su Yueyun asked curiously. She had just heard that there was something wrong with the jade pendant, but Su Qin walked out, leaving her confused for a long time. Yeah, little Qin, you just said that there was something wrong with the jade pendant. What exactly is the problem? Su Sungho also asked. It's fine now. I've already solved it. Su Qin glanced at the family Su, shook his head, and returned the jade pendant to Su Sungho. At this moment, all of the witchcraft curses in the jade pendant had disappeared, and the veiled woman had perished. Now, this jade pendant was just a simple jade pendant. It's solved? Su Sungho and Su Yueyun looked at each other, confused. They did not doubt Su Qin's words, but this problem was solved too quickly. Forget it. Let's find time to sell this jade pendant. Su Sungho took the jade pendant, looked at it repeatedly, and finally said with disinterest. They chatted for a while, then Su Qin and Su Yueyun prepared to return to the palace. At the entrance of the Eastern Palace, Su Qin wanted to take a walk nearby and separated from Su Yueyun. This witchcraft is quite interesting. Su Qin walked slowly in the imperial palace, his thoughts fluctuating. Just through a jade pendant, Su Qin understood what kind of existence witchcraft was. Compared with martial arts training, witchcraft was more inclined to rely on external objects. The foundation of every witchcraft cultivator was not themselves, but the life source in the body. Once the life source is lost, the witchcraft cultivator will be reduced to an ordinary person, or even worse than an ordinary person. Unfortunately, being restrained by blood and qi, witchcraft is destined to not be on the stage. Su Qin shook his head slightly and no longer thought about it. For ordinary people, witchcraft is strange and unpredictable and can kill people invisibly, but in the eyes of martial artists, witchcraft is just a small path. Even to deal with Su Sungho, a martial artist in the lower realm, a saintess like the veiled woman had to consume 10% of her blood essence. It can be seen that martial artists are restrained by witchcraft. Unknowingly, Su Qin walked in front of a palace. Music hall. Su Qin raised his head and looked. Music hall is the place where the musicians in the palace of the Emperor of Tang live, and it is dedicated to playing music for the imperial family. Let's see if I can sign in here. Su Qin suddenly thought. No matter which dynasty, music occupies a certain position, and its history is extremely long. System, sign in. Su Qin thought for a while and said in his heart. Chapter 112. Song of Death. Su Qin frowned slightly. Based on its name alone, the Song of Death should be a kind of musical composition that belonged to the musical score that was played by musicians and zither masters. Unfortunately, I probably won't need it. Su Qin shook his head slightly. He wasn't a musician at all and had no interest in music. Even if he had a peerless piece of music, he wouldn't spend much energy on it. However, since I've got it, there's no harm in taking a look. With a thought, Su Qin began to accept the system's infusion. Buzz. In an instant, all the secrets about Song of Death flowed slowly in Su Qin's heart. Su Qin only felt a burst of mournful music in his mind, faintly revealing the meaning of transcendence. A moment later, Su Qin suddenly opened his eyes. This Song of Death isn't simple. A trace of surprise appeared on Su Qin's face. At first, the weapon thought that the Song of Past Life was just a simple piece of music, but after receiving the system's installation, he realized that the Song of Past Life was not just a piece of music, but a combination of music and martial arts. When playing Song of Death, one could kill with the sound of the zither. It was a bit similar to Xiao Li's flying dagger. Within the range of the sound of the zither, anyone whose divine sense was not as good as Su Qin's would die. Su Qin had obtained countless divine skills from signing in at the Shaolin Temple, and there was no lack of such sound wave killing techniques. However, the killing intent revealed was too deliberate. For example, the Shaolin Temple's lion's roar used sound waves as a weapon. There were very few such natural sounds like Song of Death. It could even be said that there was no such thing. Not bad, not bad. Su Qin's face was filled with joy. After that, Su Qin once again returned to his peaceful and leisurely days. Although the palace was far from being as peaceful as the Shaolin Temple, it was about the same for Su Qin. The intrigue in the palace had nothing to do with him. As the brother-in-law of the crown prince, other people were already afraid of Su Qin. Who would dare to take the initiative to provoke him? On this day, Su Qin had just finished signing in. He suddenly felt something and looked toward the direction of the Temple of Immortals. The Immortal Palace was the resting palace of the Emperor of Tang. The Emperor of Tang is dying. Su Qin's gaze was calm. Whether it was the eye of truth or the divine sense, the Emperor of Tang, who was lying on the dragon bed in the Longevity Hall, was like a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any time. Looks like we're missing an interesting person? Su Qin shook his head and sighed. Although he had not been in the Imperial Palace for long, he had interacted with the Emperor of Tang a few times. He felt that the Emperor of Tang was a good person. At least, he treated Su Qin well and rewarded him with a lot of gold and treasures. He even wanted to transfer Su Qin to the Imperial Hospital. Although Su Qin did not care about these things at all, the Emperor of Tang had good intentions. Of course, Su Qin only felt that the Emperor of Tang was interesting. As for the rest, there was nothing else. The Emperor of Tang's death was completely because Shouyuan was approaching the end of his life. Under such circumstances, even venerable Arhat or a martial arts legend could not save him. It's good that he's dead. Living is torture. Su Qin thought silently in his heart. Although eunuch Zhao, a peak rank 1, was willing to use his own life to keep the Emperor of Tang alive, it did not mean that the Emperor of Tang could live comfortably. Now that he was dead, it was a kind of relief. However, that eunuch Zhao should not be able to live for long. Su Qin's heart skipped a beat. He carefully sensed eunuch Zhao's aura and judged in his heart. Eunuch Zhao was a peak rank 1. Logically speaking, even if he could not live for 200 years, Shouyuan should still be able to live for 180 or 190 years. Unfortunately, in order to make up for the loss of the Emperor of Tang's body, eunuch Zhao was willing to use his own life to prolong the Emperor of Tang's life. If eunuch Zhao was a peak rank 1 whose body had transformed, he would be able to hold on for a few years with his powerful body. However, eunuch Zhao's body was naturally damaged and could not transform. This caused eunuch Zhao to be close to the end of his life. Now that the Emperor of Tang was about to die, eunuch Zhao would not be able to live for long either. The Emperor of Tang is about to die. He should call the crown prince over to make arrangements for his funeral, right? Just as Su Qin was thinking this, he saw a red-clothed eunuch walk out of the Longevity Hall. His body turned into a blur, and in a moment, he arrived in front of the Eastern Palace's Qingzhen Hall. Not long after, Crown Prince Li Xing walked out in a panic and quickly headed toward the Longevity Hall. Inside the Longevity Hall, the Emperor of Tang leaned quietly on the dragon couch. His face was calm, and he did not look like he was facing death at all. Your Majesty, this old servant is useless. I can't prolong your Majesty's life. Eunuch Zhao knelt on the ground and said softly. You've done enough. The Emperor of Tang forced a smile and said lightly, if it weren't for you, I would have died 10 years ago, at this moment. Crown Prince Li Xing quickly walked into the Longevity Hall and knelt before the dragon couch. He said in a trembling voice, Father, are you all right? You're definitely fine. I'll get the imperial doctor to come over. Crown Prince Li Xing wanted to stand up, but the Emperor of Tang pressed him down. No need. The Emperor of Tang looked at Crown Prince Li Xing and shook his head. I know my own body. It's already unexpected that I can live until now. When Emperor Li Xing said this, he coughed a few times. After a long time, he continued, Before you entered Chang, and I intended to let your brothers fight for power, win over the officials, and divide the imperial court. Now, I've cleaned up those disloyal officials for you. Those who are left in the court now may not be loyal to you, but they are at least loyal to the Empire of Tang. After I die, you will take over a clean court that belongs to you completely. At that time, you can fulfill your ambitions to your heart's content. However, I may not be able to see that time. The Emperor of Tang's voice lowered when he said this. Father! Crown Prince Li Xing's eyes were red. At this moment, how could he not know what the Emperor of Tang had done for him? Since he was still a commoner, the Emperor of Tang had begun to pave the way for him and completely eliminate the obstacles after he succeeded the throne. However, there's one thing that I've been soft-hearted about. The Emperor of Tang raised his head and stared at Crown Prince Li Sheng. I should have killed all your brothers. Only then can you inherit the throne without any future troubles. The Emperor of Tang's tone flashed with a trace of complexity. Even though he had ruthlessly cleaned up the court several times, in the end, he had chosen to exile the princes instead of killing them to prevent future troubles. If they do anything in the future and are unwilling to be trapped in the fief, you don't have to worry. Just summon them back to Chang and kill them. The Emperor of Tang sighed softly. As if he had thought of something, his expression softened. In this life, I've done no wrong to anyone, but I've done wrong to your mother. The Emperor of Tang leaned on the dragon couch. A trace of nostalgia appeared on his face. His voice was like a mosquito's whisper. Ling, I've done what I promised you. Crown Prince Li Sheng looked at the Emperor of Tang, whose vitality had completely dissipated. He could not stop his tears and cried, Father, Father. Your Majesty. Eunuch Xiao raised his head and whispered. Chapter 113. The Emperor of Tang has passed away. This news spread like a hurricane throughout Chang'an city and to the surrounding countries at an extremely fast speed. His Majesty passed away? Sigh, if it weren't for His Majesty re-establishing the law of the Tang Empire, my family would have been banished to the border. His Majesty was wise all his life, how could he pass away? Countless people in Chang'an city were mourning in their hearts. The Emperor of Tang has done a lot of practical things in his decades on the throne. Now that he has passed away, the people are naturally grateful for his kindness. At the same time, somewhere in a valley outside Chang'an city, that old guy is finally dead. Prince Sun muttered to himself in shock. The Emperor of Tang had sent several princes to their fiefdoms, but Prince Sun returned halfway and deliberately waited outside Chang'an city. It was for this news. When the Emperor of Tang was alive, he didn't dare to do anything, but now that he is dead, Prince Sun is no longer bound. Prince Sun's thoughts turned quickly, and he finally got up and went to the depths of the valley. The Emperor of Tang is dead. Prince Sun looked at the two figures in the depths of the valley and said respectfully, the aura of these two figures is unfathomable, and they are vaguely integrated with the surrounding void. They are peak grade 1 great grandmasters. The one on the left is dressed in brocade clothes and has an elegant demeanor. He is King Wuxiang of Nanming. King Wuxiang is the granduncle of the current Ming Emperor. He stepped into the martial Dao since he was a child, and with the countless resources of Nanming, he finally stepped into peak grade 1 and became the foundation of Nanming. In order to sit on the throne, Prince Sun did not hesitate to join forces with Ming Emperor. After Ming Emperor agreed, in order to be foolproof, he directly sent King Wuxiang over. In addition, Ming Emperor also sent 8 grade 1 great grandmasters of Nanming to follow him. As for the one on the right, he is an old man in a black robe with a strange and gloomy aura. The old man's name is Yin Geobat, and he is also a peak grade 1 great grandmaster. However, there are hidden dangers in his cultivation technique, and he needs to drink human blood every once in a while. This time, Prince Sun contacted Yin Geobat and asked him to help him by providing 20 years of human blood. Although there are some peak grade 1 great grandmasters in the world, each of them is scattered all over the world, and they are too lazy to pay attention to Prince. Yin Geobat is the only peak grade 1 great grandmaster that Emperor Qin. In order for Yin Geobat to make a move, Prince Sun had to bear the cost of the other party's blood for the next 20 years. Your Highness Qin, don't forget that the human blood that this old man needs is the blood of martial artists. Yin Geobat gloomily glanced at His Highness Qin. Martial's blood. Prince's son's Weng when he promised, he's martial emperor, Wuxiang's Wuha's Wuxiang's. However, when he thought of the great cause at hand, as long as Yin Geobat made a move and helped him sit on the throne, he could endure anything. Prince, but the eunuch Zhao in the imperial palace? At this point, Prince Sun stopped and looked at Yin Geobat and King Wuxiang. Don't worry, leave that old thing to me. Yin Geobat said indifferently. Prince Sun was slightly relieved when he heard this. In the entire imperial palace, the one he fears the most is eunuch Xiao. Because of this, even after getting the support of Nanming King Wuyang, a peak grade 1, Prince Sun was still worried and did not hesitate to ask Ingiobat for help. Your Highness Prince Sun, after killing the crown prince, how will you ascend to the throne? At this time, King Wuyang, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. Although Prince Sun is also a member of the imperial family, now that the crown prince has ascended to the throne, even if Prince Sun kills the crown prince, how can he convince the public? Don't worry. I have contacted the ministers that imperial father has demoted. As long as the crown prince dies, they will be brought back to Chang and enter the imperial court. Prince Sun has obviously thought of a way. Since there are ministers who are disobedient, then he can just replace them with a group of obedient ones. Although this will definitely be full of hidden dangers in the long run, at least it can help Prince Sun solve his urgent needs. In that case, let's set off. King Wuyang nodded slightly and looked in the direction of Chang'an City. Outside the Long Life Temple, the civil and military officials knelt on the ground, wearing ribbons on their heads, looking sad. Crown Prince Li Xing is the same. Since the death of the Emperor of Tang last night, he has been standing here, staring blankly at the Emperor of Tang in the Long Life Temple. Your Highness, take care of yourself. A eunuch walked to Li Xing's side and whispered. I know. Crown Prince Li Xing calmed down. He knew that the most important thing now is to take over everything that the Emperor of Tang left for him. Li Xing turned slightly and looked at the civil and military officials who were also kneeling on the ground. He was about to speak. Suddenly, at this moment, a roar suddenly came from the imperial city in the distance. What happened? Crown Prince Li Xing was shocked and looked in the direction of the imperial city. Soon after, the commander of the Forbidden Army of the imperial city hurried over and bowed slightly to Crown Prince Li Xing. Your Highness, Prince Sun is outside. He is coming in. What? Crown Prince Li Xing's pupils shrank. After a while, Crown Prince Li Xing made a decision. You all come with me. Crown Prince Li Xing immediately rushed out of the imperial city. The rest of the officials looked at each other and quickly followed behind Crown Prince Li Xing. At this moment, outside the imperial city, Prince Sun stood there quietly. Ingiobat stood under the imperial city. Around him, more than a dozen grade 1 great grandmasters of the Empire of Tang were facing a great enemy. What about eunuch Xiao? That old thing won't make a move. Do you think you can stop this old man? Ingiobat smiled contemptuously with his hands behind his back. Although there are hidden dangers in his cultivation technique and he needs to drink human blood every once in a while, but in any case, he is still a peak grade 1 great grandmaster. How can he be stopped by more than a dozen grade 1 great grandmasters? The reason why he is not killing now is nothing more than being wary of eunuch Xiao. Although in front of Prince Sun, Ingiobat pretended not to care about eunuch Xiao, but in fact, he was extremely cautious. A martial artist who can become a peak grade 1 great grandmaster is not a fool. How can he underestimate an existence of the same level? Just when the two sides were confronting each other, Crown Prince Li Xing finally arrived at the imperial city. Li Chen, Father Emperor just passed away. What do you mean now? Crown Prince Li Xing glared at Prince Sun and said word by word. Oh. Then I want to know. Prince Sun slowly walked out and looked at Crown Prince Li Xing with a cold gaze. You bastard, how can you sit on the throne? Today, I will let Father Emperor know that his choice was wrong. When Prince Sun said this, behind him, the 8 grade 1 great grandmasters of Nanming took a step forward. King Wuyang looked up at Crown Prince Li Xing and said indifferently, Your Highness Qin, do you need me to kill him? You are? The moment Crown Prince Li Xing saw King Wuyang, he immediately reacted. Nanming's King Wuyang? Li Qin, are you colluding with a foreign country? Crown Prince Li Xing did not expect that Li Qin, a prince of the Tang Empire, would actually collude with the Southern Ming Empire. Chapter 114. The Empire of Tang has been established for 560 years. During this period, there have been many princes fighting for the throne, and even brothers killing each other. But no prince has ever dared to collude with a foreign country. In the law of the Tang Empire, this is a felony of treason. Even if it is a prince, if he violates this bottom line, he will be stripped of his imperial status and then executed. Li Chen, you have to think clearly. What are you doing now? Crown Prince Li Xing snapped. Just now, his attention was focused on Yin Jiubat. But now, as King Wuxiang raised his head, Crown Prince Li Xing finally realized that the situation was about to get out of control. Now, there is only one peak grade 1. With the background of the Emperor of Tang's palace, Crown Prince Li Xing is confident that he can defeat him. But now there is also King Wuxiang. The rest of the ministers were also shocked and angry, looking at Prince Sun in disbelief. Hee. Prince Sun was too lazy to pay attention to the crowd. Winner takes all. If he eventually ascends the throne, so what if he colludes with a foreign country? So what if it's a felony of treason? Isn't it still his own decision? King Wuxiang, make your move. Prince Sun turned his head to look at King Wuxiang and said. Hearing this, King Wuxiang chuckled, took a step forward, and disappeared. In an instant, Crown Prince Li Xing, who was far above the imperial city, suddenly felt a sense of palpitation. Not good. Crown Prince Li Xing wanted to retreat. But it was too late. King Wuxiang had already appeared within 10 meters of Crown Prince Li Xing. For a peak grade 1 Great Grandmaster, a distance of 10 meters is covered in an instant. Crown Prince Li Xing can't hide at all. Your Highness, be careful. A loyal minister was shocked when he saw this scene. He subconsciously wanted to step forward and block in front of Crown Prince Li Xing. Bang! At this moment, more than a dozen red-clothed eunuchs appeared quietly and surrounded Crown Prince Li Xing, barely blocking King Wuxiang's attack. King Wuxiang raised his eyebrows and looked at the red-clothed eunuchs. These red-clothed eunuchs are all grade 1 Great Grandmasters. At this moment, they are protecting Crown Prince Li Xing. Is this the foundation of the Empire of Tang? King Wuxiang shook his head slightly and said indifferently. Sorry to trouble you. Crown Prince Li Xing's expression was extremely grave. Before the Emperor of Tang passed away, he had told him everything about the Emperor of Tang's palace. The Emperor of Tang's palace has a total of 23 grade 1 Great Grandmasters. These 23 grade 1 Great Grandmasters only listen to the orders of the Emperor of Tang. Now that the Emperor of Tang has passed away, they are all under the command of Crown Prince Li Xing. However, although 23 grade 1 Great Grandmasters seem to be a lot, it is a bit difficult to block 2 peak grade 1 Great Grandmasters. Whether it was Yin Jiubat or King Wuxiang, they were both famous peak grade 1 experts. Unless it was a martial artist of the same level, there was nothing that could move them. As for the army encirclement and suppression, if it was outside Chang and city, this method could be used. Even if it was a peak grade 1, once trapped in an army of millions, if they did not escape, they would be exhausted to death. But now that they are in Chang and city, encirclement and suppression is obviously unrealistic. Use an array. Crown Prince Li Xing said in a deep voice. When the red-clothed eunuchs heard this, they looked at each other and immediately changed their positions, faintly surrounding King Wuxiang. On the other side, the more than 10 grade 1 Great Grandmasters who were fighting Yin Jiubat also stepped in a certain position, intertwining and cooperating with each other to faintly trap Yin Jiubat. This array was left by the founding father of the Empire of Tang. It can gather all the power of the array and exert the combat power of the weak to defeat the strong. Crown Prince Li Xing does not know whether this array is useful against peak grade 1 Great Grandmasters. But now, he can only choose to fight. Ha! King Wuxiang's eyes narrowed slightly, and a smile appeared on his face. It's a bit interesting. However, if you think you can deal with this king, you are dreaming. Before King Wuxiang's words fell, his figure disappeared again and rushed towards the red-clothed eunuchs. At the same time, Su Qin walked slowly to the front of the Long Life Temple. At this time, the Long Life Temple was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. The palace maids and eunuchs fled because of Prince Chen's attack on the imperial city. Su Qin slowly walked into the Long Life Temple. It's you? Next to the body of the Emperor of Tang, eunuch Zhao, who was wearing a purple robe, glanced at Su Qin and said lightly, "There are 2 peak grade 1 great grandmasters outside the imperial city who are about to enter. Take advantage of the time now and run for your life." Eunuch Zhao closed his eyes. In the past 10 years, in order to prolong the life of the Emperor of Tang, Eunuch Zhao has almost exhausted his vitality. Now he can't move. It is not an exaggeration to say that he is a lamp that has run out of oil. He may die in the next moment. Run for your life? Su Qin smiled and didn't say anything. No matter what, the Emperor of Tang and I were acquaintances. Now that he is dead, I am here to send him off. Su Qin said unhurriedly. The Emperor of Tang? Eunuch Zhao opened his eyes again and looked at Su Qin. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't move, he would have already punished Su Qin. Daring to address the Emperor in such a manner is a crime of great disrespect. How do you plan to send His Majesty off? Eunuch Zhao stared at Su Qin with a dangerous glint in his eyes. Su Qin didn't care at all. He casually sat down and looked at the zither in front of him. The zither was dark green in color and had a profound and mysterious feeling. It was placed not far from the dragon bed. Clearly, the Emperor of Tang liked it very much when he was alive. Play Rebirth to send him off. Su Qin gently pressed his hands on the strings. You. Eunuch Zhao's expression sank. No matter what, the Emperor of Tang is still the Emperor of the Empire of Tang. Even if he dies, he should be put to rest by a special musician, which is in line with royal etiquette. Su Qin's move was tantamount to looking down on the Emperor of Tang. Just when Eunuch Zhao was about to act recklessly to stop Su Qin's behavior. Dang! Su Qin's right hand gently plucked the zither strings. An ethereal and lonely zither sound slowly spread out. In an instant, wherever the zither sound passed, the air faintly solidified, like a mountain shrouding everything. This is... Eunuch Zhao's complexion changed greatly, and he looked at Su Qin in disbelief. Outside the imperial city, the situation was gradually coming to an end. The 23 grade 1 great grandmasters in the imperial palace of the Emperor of Tang acted together. With the array left by the founding father of the Empire of Tang, they barely stopped the 2 peak grade 1 great grandmasters, King Weiyang and Yin Jiubat. The 8 grade 1 great grandmasters of Nanming also joined the battlefield, waiting for an opportunity to act. Haha. Can't even withstand a single blow. At this moment, Yin Jiubat laughed wildly. He raised his hand and sent the 2 grade 1 great grandmasters flying. He took a step and appeared above the imperial city. Little Crown Prince, that Eunuch Zhao hasn't appeared for so long. There must be a problem. In that case, go to hell for this old man. Yin Jiubat's expression was cold. He raised his right hand and slowly pressed it towards Crown Prince Li Sheng. Your Highness! All the civil and military officials exclaimed. Not good. The expressions of the more than a dozen red-clothed eunuchs surrounding King Weiyang changed greatly. They wanted to go back and save Crown Prince Li Sheng, but they were easily stopped by King Weiyang. Li Sheng. Su Yuan, who had just rushed over, saw this scene and suddenly turned pale with fright. If you die, the throne is mine. A cruel smile appeared on Prince Sun's face. Am I going to die? Crown Prince Li Sheng was in a trance. He only felt that the palm pressed down by Yin Jiubat was getting bigger and bigger, almost covering his entire field of vision. Just as Yin Jiubat was about to slap Crown Prince Li Sheng to death and then return to slaughter the group of grade 1 great grandmasters of the Emperor of Tang's palace. Dang! An ethereal and lonely zither sound came in an instant. It was as if the heavens and earth were long and time was rushing. Who is it? Yin Jiubat's eyes suddenly filled with horror. His right hand that was pressing down on Crown Prince Li Sheng seemed to be completely locked and could no longer move. No! Yin Jiubat roared hysterically. The next moment, under everyone's incredulous gaze, Yin Jiubat's whole body suddenly exploded, stirring up a mist of blood. This is... Everyone who saw this scene was stunned on the spot, fear in their eyes. Chapter 115. Chang'an City. Below the imperial city, Prince Qin, who originally had victory in his grasp, looked as if he had seen a ghost at this time. When Ingiobat, a peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, got rid of the more than a dozen Grade 1 Great Grandmasters of the Emperor of Tang Palace and appeared in front of Crown Prince Li Sheng, Prince Chen looked at Li Sheng as if he was looking at a dead man. Ingiobat is a peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. If he gets close, even an ordinary Grade 1 Great Grandmaster will die, let alone an ordinary person like Crown Prince Li Sheng who doesn't know martial Dao. But the next moment, the 9-yin bat that had a monstrous aura suddenly exploded, stirring up countless bloody mists. This, Prince Chen was dumbstruck and almost thought that he was hallucinating. This was a peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. Even if it was Eunuch Zhao in the Imperial Palace, it would take hundreds of moves to determine the winner between him and Ingiobat. But now, he suddenly exploded into a blood mist. How incredible was this? Compared to the shock of Prince Chen, Crown Prince Li Sheng, who was closest to Ingiobat, was also dumbfounded. What happened? Why is he not dead yet? Crown Prince Li Sheng was ready to close his eyes and wait for death, but not only did he not die, but Ingiobat also died. What's going on? King Weiyang's scalp exploded, and monstrous waves were set off in his heart. Although he looked down on Ingiobat's need to drink human blood every once in a while, but in any case, Ingiobat is a true peak Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. Now that the other party suddenly fell into such a state, the fear in King Weiyang's heart can be imagined. It's over. Let's retreat. King Weiyang glanced at the 8 Grade 1 Great Grandmasters of Nanming and suddenly made a decision in his heart. The Ming Emperor only asked him to help Prince Chen ascend to the throne, not to send him to his death. At this moment, Ingiobat's sudden explosion undoubtedly cast a shadow over King Weiyang's heart. If he continues, will he follow in Ingiobat's footsteps? The 8 Grade 1 Great Grandmasters of Nanming looked at each other and began to slowly retreat. However, at this moment, clang, another lonely and ethereal tune of the zither reverberated in the air. The surroundings became quiet and peaceful, yet it was filled with a feeling of transcendence. Everything that had happened in the past vanished into thin air. Only by being reborn in the afterlife would one be able to transcend. Bang, 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 bang. As the zither sound spread, the 8 Grade 1 Great Grandmasters of Nanming exploded and blood sprayed out. Not good. King Weiyang was shocked. It's zither music. King Weiyang finally reacted and looked around in disbelief. It wasn't until this moment that King Weiyang realized that whether it was Ingiobat or Nanming's 8 Grade 1 Great Grandmasters, the reason why they suddenly exploded was probably because of the zither music. However, after discovering this, King Weiyang became even more desperate. If it were any other kind of attack, he would know how to block it. But the sound of the zither, clang. Another Guqin sound swept over, shaking the area continuously, ethereal and lonely. God! King Weiyang suddenly stopped and turned to look into the depths of the palace. The next moment, boom! King Weiyang's body also exploded. Clang! The sound of the zither was lonely and endless, faintly revealing grief and loneliness. It continued to spread and permeate, enveloping the entire Chang'an city. At this moment, the ethereal and lonely sound of the zither echoed in the ears of all the people in Chang'an city, from the old men to the babies waiting to be fed. Above the imperial city, Crown Prince Li Sheng and the officials of the imperial court were also immersed in the sound of the zither. The sound of the zither that was fatal to King Weiyang Ingiobat, and the others was like a heavenly sound in the ears of Crown Prince Li Sheng and the others. After a while, the sound of the zither slowly dissipated. Crown Prince Li Sheng calmed down and looked down at the imperial city. He saw that under the sound of the zither, the 2 peak Grade 1 Great Grandmasters, King Weiyang and Ingiobat, Nanming's 8 Grade 1 Great Grandmasters, and Prince Chen's group all exploded. They're all dead. Crown Prince Li Sheng was at a loss. Your Highness, are you okay? At this time, a group of ministers hurriedly rushed over and surrounded Crown Prince Li Sheng, asking him all kinds of questions. Although the Emperor of Tang has passed away and Crown Prince Li Sheng will ascend the throne sooner or later, but at least for now, he is not the Emperor of Tang, so he can only be called Your Highness. More than a dozen red-clothed eunuchs and other grade 1 great-grandmasters of the Emperor of Tang's palace also came over. Eunuch Lu, do you know what's going on? Crown Prince Li Sheng calmed down and looked at one of the red-clothed eunuchs. This red-clothed eunuch was Eunuch Lu. When Crown Prince Li Sheng was wandering among the people, he was secretly protecting him and was a trustworthy person. Reporting back to your majesty, this old slave doesn't know. Eunuch Lu was silent for a while and said respectfully. His words were completely from the bottom of his heart. Just now, under the sound of the zither, he was instinctively immersed in the sound. When the sound of the zither dissipated, King Wuyang and the other people of Nanming were already dead. Your Highness. This general guesses that maybe it's because of the zither's sound just now. At this moment, the commander of the Forbidden Army said. When these words came out, the other grade 1 great-grandmasters nodded slightly. They also had doubts at this time. After all, the zither sound was too strange. Zither sound. Crown Prince Li Sheng fell into deep thought. Imperial Palace Ancestral Temple. The temple keeper's bent waist has now straightened, and the aura of a peak grade 1 pervaded his body. Zither sound. The temple keeper looked dignified. His eyes were fixed on the imperial city just now. Especially when he saw Prince Chen colluding with Nanming and leading the enemy in, he was ready to take action. Although the temple keeper is a peak grade 1 great-grandmaster, he is not loyal to the crown prince, the Emperor of Tang, but to the Emperor of Tang. If Prince Chen did not collude with Nanming, even if he really killed Crown Prince Li Sheng and ascended the throne, the temple keeper would only watch coldly. He only needs to ensure that the prince of the Tang dynasty is surnamed Li. As for who it is, it doesn't matter at all. But Prince Chen colluded with a foreign country, which is different. However, just when the temple keeper was about to take action, the zither's sound rang out. Then, 2 peak grade 1 great-grandmasters, 8 grade 1 great-grandmasters, and others all died. To kill 2 peak grade 1 and 8 grade 1 great-grandmasters with zither sound, I'm afraid it's already the means of a legend, the temple keeper thought silently in his heart. Perhaps the grade 1 great-grandmasters in the imperial palace do not understand what happened just now, but as a peak grade 1, the temple keeper naturally knows the meaning. Who is it? The temple keeper's thoughts turned quickly. Is it the one who entered the ancestral temple last time? In a flash, the temple keeper suddenly thought of something. Some time ago, the temple keeper was guarding the ancestral temple outside, but when he came in, he found that someone had sneaked into the ancestral temple without his knowledge and lit a stick of sandalwood. At the same time, inside the Long Life Temple, Su Qin's expression was calm and deep, and he slowly took his hand away from the azure zither. Chapter 116. Inside the Long Life Temple. The music lingered in the air. After Su Qin finished playing the song Rebirth, he was ready to go back. He came here with the intention of sending Emperor Li Sheng off on his last journey, and also to clean up the cultivators outside the imperial city. Now that his purpose has been accomplished, Su Qin will naturally not stay for long. Eunuch Xiao's eyes widened as he looked at Su Qin in disbelief. Although he was like a lamp that had run out of oil and his life force was almost exhausted, his divine sense was still there. He could clearly feel that with the sound of the zither, the auras of the 2 peak grade 1 great-grandmasters and 8 grade 1 great-grandmasters outside the imperial city quickly disappeared. I didn't expect that His Highness the Crown Prince would marry the sister of a legend. At this moment, how could Eunuch Xiao not understand Su Qin's strength? His tone was complicated, but there was relief in it. A legend? Su Qin stopped and looked down at Eunuch Xiao. Your Majesty, you can go with peace of mind. Eunuch Xiao turned his head with difficulty and whispered to himself. His aura was getting weaker and weaker, and finally dissipated completely. Passed away. Su Qin shook his head slightly. He was not surprised. In order to extend the life of the Emperor of Tang, Eunuch Xiao constantly exhausted his life force. After the death of the Emperor of Tang, he could not hold on for long. It was extremely difficult for him to even move. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to let the 2 peak grade 1 great-grandmasters outside the imperial city without doing anything. Now that he passed away, It was completely normal. You're quite loyal. Su Qin shook his head slightly and evaluated eunuch Zhao in his heart. Most of the martial artists in this world are unruly, especially the peak grade 1 great grandmasters. They basically won't act easily. They all want to take the last step and live a carefree life for 500 years. But eunuch Zhao is different. For eunuch Zhao, the Emperor of Tang's life is far more important than him. Among the peak grade 1 great grandmasters in the world, he is obviously very different. Nanming. Inside the palace. Ming Emperor sat upright on the dragon throne, deep in thought. No one knew what he was thinking. At this moment, the commander of the embroidered uniform guard walked in respectfully and bowed. Your Majesty. Oh. Ming Emperor raised his head slightly, looked at the commander of the brocade guards, and asked casually, the Emperor of Tang has passed away. Granduncle should have arrived at the palace of the Emperor of Tang by now, right? Yes, Your Majesty. The last message I received from King Wuxiang was that he joined forces with Yin Jiubat to attack the Emperor of Tang's palace. The commander of the embroidered uniform guards immediately replied. That would be great. With Granduncle and E9 Bat joining forces, even if that eunuch Zhao is here, it's useless. Ming Emperor's tone was flat but full of confidence. Your Majesty, hesitating, the commander couldn't help but ask. Your Highness asked for 800,000 sets of armor from Prince Sun. Isn't that a bit too little? The commander of the embroidered uniform guards looked puzzled. Although 800,000 sets of armor could definitely make the Empire of Tang cut off a piece of meat, compared to them, Prince Sun had no choice at all. Not to mention 800,000 sets of armor, even if it was 1 million sets, Prince Sun could only agree. 800,000 sets of armor? Ming Emperor smiled, and a trace of disdain flashed across his face. These 800,000 sets of armor are just to make him feel at ease. My purpose is not a mere 800,000 sets of armor, but the Empire of Tang. At this point, Ming Emperor suddenly stood up and said word by word, do you think I asked Granduncle to go to the Emperor of Tang's palace just to help the Emperor of Tang's son sit on the throne? Your Majesty, what do you mean? The commander of the embroidered uniform guards was shocked and couldn't help but ask. When the news from the Emperor of Tang's palace comes back, you will know. Ming Emperor paced slowly and didn't say much. Just when the commander of the embroidered uniform guards was secretly guessing, an imperial bodyguard hurriedly rushed in. Your Majesty, the news from the Emperor of Tang's palace came. The imperial guard knelt on one knee on the ground, and cold sweat kept coming out of his forehead. Oh! A smile appeared on Ming Emperor's face. The commander of the embroidered uniform guards next to him was also full of curiosity. From the tone of Ming Emperor just now, it was obvious that he had a plan. Now that the news came back, he was naturally a little curious. Read it. Ming Emperor leaned slightly on the dragon throne and said lightly. Yes. The imperial guard braced himself and read. King Wuxiang and 8 first-class imperial guards were all buried outside the Emperor of Tang's palace. No one survived. There was dead silence. After the imperial guard finished reading, he felt that the surroundings were quiet for a moment. The imperial guard trembled and knelt on the ground, not daring to look up. After a long time, Ming Emperor's voice slowly sounded, has the information been confirmed? At this moment, Ming Emperor's voice was slightly hoarse, as if he was suppressing something. In fact, when he asked this question, he already had the answer in his heart. It involved a peak grade 1 great grandmaster in Nanming and the death of 8 grade 1 great grandmasters. If it was not confirmed in every possible way, who would dare to send this information back? Reporting back to Your Majesty, it has been repeatedly confirmed, the Imperial Guard said in a trembling voice. You can go. Ming Emperor waved his hand and seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. King Wuxiang was the foundation of Nanming. Now that he died in the Emperor of Tang's palace, it was definitely an unprecedented blow to the entire Nanming. Not to mention that in addition to King Wuxiang, there were also the 8 first-class Imperial Guards of Nanming. You can also go. Ming Emperor glanced at the commander of the embroidered uniform guards kneeling on the ground and said in a low voice. The commander of the embroidered uniform guards quickly retreated, not daring to mention the plan that Ming Emperor had just mentioned. Even King Weiyang was dead. No matter how many plans there are, they will dissipate like flowers in a mirror and the moon in the water. What happened in the imperial palace of the Empire of Tang spread throughout the world at lightning speed. Originally, the death of the Emperor of Tang and the ascension of the Crown Prince had attracted the attention of various countries. Now that Nanming was involved, it attracted the attention of countless forces. Everyone was watching the development of the Emperor of Tang's imperial palace with the attitude of watching a play. Many people were not optimistic about the Crown Prince. Prince Sun has the support of Nanming and Yin Jiubat, and 2 peak grade 1 great grandmasters behind him. What can the Crown Prince use to resist? But with the fall of the 2 peak grade 1 great grandmasters outside the Emperor of Tang's imperial palace, the world was completely shaken. This is a peak grade 1 great grandmaster. How could he fall just like that? Just when the world was shocked by what happened outside the Emperor of Tang's imperial palace, Su Qin had returned to the Right Spring Square and continued his leisurely life. For Crown Prince Li Sheng, Su Qin's actions were tantamount to saving the imperial court and the hundreds of millions of people of the Empire of Tang. If Prince Sun ascends the throne, he will definitely clean up the current civil and military officials. Coupled with Nanming adding fuel to the fire, the Empire of Tang will soon fall into decline. But in Su Qin's eyes, it was just playing the song Reincarnation, which was nothing at all. Late at night, Su Qin's figure appeared in front of the imperial tomb. It seems that after being in the imperial palace for so long, I have never signed in at the imperial tomb. Su Qin stopped and looked at the imperial tomb of the Emperor of Tang in the distance, and suddenly thought, "Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality."